What is going on, everyone? Welcome to the 10th edition of the Littleroot Record. This week, I'm joined by, again, one of my dear friends and one of the top players in the world, Stefan Mott, also known as Pengy. Stefan,
Hello.
how are you doing?
I'm doing good, Angelo. How are you doing today?
I'm doing just fine. It's good. I haven't done one of these in a month because life is busy, and it's good to get back to doing some interviews. And I'm happy that you're here to join. I know we've mentioned doing this for a while now, and it's finally good to
It's
sit down.
finally time.
Yeah, it's finally time to get it done.
I gotta know. What's the name of the turtle in the background?
Oh, that's Shock. She's a sassy bitch.
I love her. She's so cute.
She is yeah. So right now I'm actually, and for the past few podcasts as well, I'm sitting at Amanda's desk instead of my desk because it's closer to the Wi-Fi router because my network's been god awful. So now instead of getting like a full view of the tank, you get looking up close on what she's doing. And
I like that.
Right now she's splashing at me and she wants food even though you all ate today. We get a little snacky.
We're gonna call it the sassy cam.
It is. So let's just get started. Introduce you for those of you our listeners who don't know you. Who are you? How have you gotten into Pokemon? How long have you been playing? So on and so forth.
Hi, my name is Stefan. I go by Pengy online. I've been playing VGC since Sword and Shield came out, so around like December 2019, January 2020-ish. And yeah, I've been playing video games for a while. I got into Pokemon because I happened to work an esports event with Rosemary Kelly, and I was complaining about how the game that I was playing at the time was super, like, in a bad spot, terrible patch, not fun to play anymore at one point, and she was like, you should play Pokemon, because I had talked about how I used to speedrun Pokemon Coliseum, which is all double battles, and we talked about that at some point earlier in the weekend. She's like, you should play Pokemon. It's all double battles. And I was like, oh, I didn't know people played Pokemon. Like, okay, sure. And then she explained that like Sword and Shield were coming out in like 2 months, and like everyone's really bad when a new game comes out, so it's like a good time to get into it. I'm like, all right, like, I'll try it.
Yeah, and try you did. Like, we can get into your past and previous video games later, but I'd say my main focus for at least the start is your rookie season, that COVID year, and mainly your regional runs in 2022 when GS Cup came back. You were so going into 2022, how many points were you at for your Worlds Invite?
I think 37.
Okay, so you're going into regionals are just back from COVID. You're going with 37 points, and my God, you went and grinded events. What was your thought process like going into once the circuit came back? What was your thought process on how you were going to get your Worlds Invite in pretty much in half the season, pretty much?
Yeah, I like thought that I was pretty good initially when I started playing, because like I played like I used to live in New Jersey here, like New Jersey, so I was playing like New York, New Jersey, PA locals, which are very, very hard and very, very good to improve. So I went into the 2020 season just kind of like wanting to qualify for Worlds already. Realistically, like I think everyone goes into their rookie season wanting to qualify for Worlds and not realizing whether or not it's a realistic goal. And in that case, like half the season had been played on Sun and Moon, so like I went in having never played any BGC, and there was only half a season. So without COVID, I probably don't qualify for Worlds that season, but we'll never know. But like my second event was the Collinsville Regional in like February 2020, and I beat Andrew Ding in the PC on the Friday, and then I played him again in the regional and like lost, but like he won the regional. And then my second loss was to Azulite, who beat me off of a crit, who got top 4 in the regional. So, and I ended up going 6-3, and I missed points because the old point system was really bad. But like I came out of that thinking like, all right, I've been playing for like 3 months. And like for me to not get points, I had to hit 2 of the top 4 players in this tournament.
Yeah.
And also learned in the middle of the tournament what water bubble did. We're not going to talk about that. But yeah, so like coming out of that season, like we had 2 years of COVID where like nothing happened, and like I didn't like grind for 2 years. Like I didn't play very much during like the beginning of COVID because it felt I think a lot of people just kind of stopped playing before the Players Cups were announced. It just kind of felt like there wasn't any reason to play. But yeah, so like I started practicing a lot more in like 2021 during the Players Cup era, and like with events coming back, I felt like I was capable of making a Worlds run because like if we have 4 months, like if I can like max out my BFLs for locals, like all you need is a couple of points from regionals, and then they announced there weren't going to be locals. So I was like, all right, I guess I'll go to England. I'll go to Liverpool. We'll try to make that work. So yeah, I went to EUIC and NAIC as well. So like I had enough events to like get all the points I needed. I did not get points from EUIC or NAIC, so it ended up being very, very close, but you know, we got there.
Yeah, I was going to say you finished at I think exactly 400, and part of that was I know you mentioned Liverpool, where I believe you cut Liverpool. That was your first cut, right?
Yes, sir.
And so yeah, you have the cut in Liverpool, and then your next event going into everything was Indianapolis, which is
there was an EUIC bomb in the middle of those.
Okay, there was the EUIC.
There was an EUIC bomb in the middle of those, but Chalky got top 16 at EUIC with my team, so like that kind of inspired me to stick with the team a little bit more.
Yeah. And okay, so I couldn't remember the exact thing. And so after the UIC bomb, you're going coming back stateside, and Indianapolis is where I believe you really put your name on the map as I'm here. I'm one of the top new players around. Let's talk about that. What was your team going into it, and what was your thought process like coming into the event? Like,
how deep do we want to go on the team?
Let's not go super deep on the team. Let's do like...
I'll mention some of my favorite things. So one of the things that I was doing with this is it was closed team sheet, obviously, and the team got a lot of attention after Liverpool, and then got even more attention after UIC. So one of the things that I was doing consistently was I was making a couple of decisions on, like, conscious decisions on things that I was changing specifically because I knew people would be more likely to know my team, and I figured if I have 1 or 2 moves that are different than what they know, they'll, as soon as I show one of those, they won't be able to assume anything else, even if they're correct on like 4 of the 6 sets. If I show them something that they know was not on the team, they'll have to second guess everything else that they think they know. So going into the event, I had some really, really cool techs. The first thing that I had was actually a Sableye tech that ended up being one of my favorite spreads of all time, was my Incineroar. And so I'd worked with Sableye on this idea where he had used a Choppleberry Incineroar with Burning Jealousy to counter Thunderous Zacian. And he was like, yeah, like if you have Choppleberry, you live Max Knuckle, you live Sacred Sword, like they can't kill you through screens. And like you can always get the Burning Jealousy off, and then you burn you burn both Pokemon, because there was the Intrepid Sword boost from the Zacian turn 1 and the Defiant boost on the Thunderous. So I thought that was a really cool idea. I couldn't run Choppleberry because I needed Shucka for the Rinya matchup. But I did find a spread that allowed me to do the same thing while still running Shucka. And it was almost max defense, max HP. Like, it was like 180 defense. And initially I was running Impish, because I was like, all right, like, let's, like, now I'll have, like, you know, plus defense, minus special attack, whatever. And then I ran into some problems testing where I was like, okay, there is one Zacian spread, like the really bulky Zacian spread at the time. It's not like, if they click sub and I click Burning Jealousy, that's kind of a problem. Like, yeah, I get the burn on like the Thunderous, but like the Zacian doesn't get burned. It's a little bit weird. So what I ended up doing was I changed the nature from Impish to Relaxed, which is minus speed, and I put 20 EVs into special attack because it guaranteed that Burning Jealousy would break the bulkiest Zacian sub. And then, if they clicked sub, I could click Reflect Burning Jealousy and then Thunder Wave the Zacian the next turn if they subbed. And that automatically won me my top 16 match in Indianapolis. Like, the guy had absolutely no matchup. Like, I just clicked Burning Jealousy, like, Reflect, turn one both games and won the game. It was great.
Yeah.
Then, sorry, go ahead.
I was going to say, just before we go a little deeper, just, like, if you can even just name, like, the 6, of course.
Oh, right, sorry.
No worries. I know it's Sword and Shield's GS Cup. We all assume it's Simurus on the team.
Yeah, so it was, it was Kyogre, Grimmsnarl, Zacian, Zapdos, Rillaboom, Incin.
Yep. Also known, I believe that was known as the French Rain team, or at least that's what some people call.
No, French Rain is Kartana.
Kartana. Yep. Okay. Thank you.
It's not Pengy
I got
Rain,
all the
Angelo.
I got all the rain teams confused.
You're hurting me.
I'm sorry. There
carries my name. No. So the other thing that I really liked that I did there, I was messing around with the 4th move slot on the Zacian a little bit. I went into Liverpool with Swords Dance. And the idea for Swords Dance was, like, I just really punish people getting turns wrong. I'm not going to lie, I don't remember what my Zacian was at Indianapolis on the 4th move slot. It was either Swords Dance or Sub or Sacred Sword. One of those 3.
Something that wasn't clicked.
I think I ran 3 attacks in Indy. I just changed the Zacian set a lot, so, like, I can't remember which one was which at this point. But the one that I really liked is I ran Min Speed Rillaboom to Underspeed Indeedee for terrain. And the reason why I was able to run Min Speed Rillaboom is I looked at my team from Liverpool, and I looked at the team Chalky used at EUIC, and I looked at just generally the way people run Mons, and I went, if everyone always respects Fake Out, do I really need to run Fake Out on my Rillaboom if they're just going to respect it anyway? So I didn't. And everyone always respected Fake Out. I was min speed, so I got better U-turn pivots. I ran U-turn instead of Fake Out. And I got to win the terrain war against Indeedee on lead. And I got to just, like, U-turn out and, like, oftentimes be slower than Incineroar. Like, Incin would parting shot, and then I'd U-turn and be like, okay, like, here we go. But I could still do cool stuff like U-turn, pivoting out with my Incin second because I was minus speed on the Incin as well from the relaxed nature. So it was cool. That was fun. I think that's really all I did for that tournament. That was, like, particularly notable. Yeah, those were kind of the two neat changes that I made.
Yeah, and I think, like, a lot of people talk about creativity. When they talk about creativity with Mons, they usually talk about the choice in the Pokemon themselves on the team, using something that is slightly off meta as a source of creativity. And I think what you just talked about is a wonderful example of creativity, I mean, specifically for closed team sheet, but even in just, like, your spreads with knowing that, okay, if I just throw these 20 EVs in to special attack, I can go and pick up a Burning Jealousy KO, because the person, unless you're prepped for that, even if you know, okay, they have Burning Jealousy, you might not know that, okay, it's 100%, like, you can just say, okay, they have Burning Jealousy, who cares, I'm bulky. And then it turns into, oh, I'm screwed. I think that even on the most standard Pokemon, like Rillaboom and Incineroar, the most standard Pokemon that we've seen ever since they've been out, there's still a lot of ways to find creativity in building a team out and using them on in an unconventional way. And
I mean, I think there's layers, right? Like, for somebody who just casually watches VG, or, like, every now and then looks at tournament results here and there, like, you're not gonna be sort of in deep enough to know, oh, these are always the moves that they run. So, like, Incin running, I don't know, Burning Jealousy is, like, maybe doesn't jump out to somebody as, like, a weird creative tech. And so you do have that sort of, like, surface level oh, everyone is using all the same Pokemon, so that must mean that there's no creativity in the game. And then, like, for people who play a little bit more, who get into it a little bit more, you start seeing, like, oh, like, this person put Light Screen on their Whimsicott. Like, that's pretty interesting. Like, that's
Yeah,
not normal.
yeah,
And
like
then,
we're
like,
seeing that right now. You're right.
yeah,
Lightstream
and then, like,
Whimsicott is great.
moving on a little bit further, like, you get to the point where now in Open Team Sheet, a lot of the creativity does come with spreads. Like maybe less so in this format right now because like a lot of stuff just is super power crept to the point where like there's very little you can do with it. But like Raging Bolt spreads, for example, like I mean to use the personal example, the last local that we both went to,
I was a
like
victim of.
yeah, I mean you were less like Luca Paz came to this local, and I just decided the night before that it would be funny to run max speed, max special attack Raging Bolt because nobody expects it to be. Now everyone does, but like at the time nobody expected Raging Bolt to be max speed. So like I got a speed boost after a Draco Meteor in Sun, and like that won me the game. Like stuff like that happens, or like I made a tweet the other day that's still popping off. I think all the Japanese players found it now, where like I tweeted my favorite team from Scarlet and Violet and asked people for their favorite teams in Scarlet and Violet. And I'm gonna read you my Roaring Moon spread, like because this is just a support Roaring Moon, which is not that common at the time for Reg B, but like it existed. Breaking Swipe, Tail, and Roost Snarl, doesn't seem that weird. But the spread is 164 HP, 172 defense, 4 special attack with a minus special attack nature, 100 special defense, 68 speed, and 7 attack IVs. Because what that lets me do practically is it gives me a speed boost that hits the minimum speed that I need it to while giving me as much bulk as possible. So the speed is 1 stat higher than I think 3 other stats. No, it's 1 higher than the defense and the Spadef. Okay. And it also lets me do fun stuff like the Roaring Moon lives, like Fluttermane, Dazzling Gleam, and stuff.
Oh,
but
okay.
like,
yeah,
the main point that I'm getting at being a lot of the creativity does come from the unseen things in like spreads now, where it's like that moment that you may or may not clock in a stream match as a viewer, where like somebody just like attacks in like what seems like a very, very clear attack, and then like loses the game because the other mod lives on 3. Like something like that. I think a good example is the Wolfie versus Ashton finals from last season, where it came down to like Arcanine using Flare Blitz on a Golden Go.
Yeah.
And like
it was a 50-50.
It was a 50-50. But like both players knew that they had done unique things with their spreads, so they were both 100% confident that roll was going to go their way. And yeah, like I find that kind of stuff really, really interesting. I really, really enjoy working on spreads when I'm feeling particularly inspired. Less so this format because, again, there's only so much you can do with spreads. But like the teams that I'm working on right now, I'm really happy with some of the spreads that I've been able to come up with. My Reg F team, I was super happy with the spreads on that team. And I just really like spending time in the damage calculator. I don't know when that happened. I'm not even a math guy, but like it's really, really rewarding to like just have a game where everything lives on like less than 5% and the opponent just gets more and more exasperated.
Yeah, it's funny. Like, yeah, as you said, like you come from like an arts background and a games background, and you're living in the damage calculator. And I'm the one who is a professional economist. And one of my favorite parts of this meta is that I can say, well, I can stack the Terra Electric on the Hadron engine, on the terrain, and yeah, after enough multipliers, like it's the number's large enough where whatever you did doesn't matter. I think in that same so that local that you mentioned with the Raging Bolt, I was using my the Fire Pond Miraidon team.
Yes, you were.
My buddy Chris and I worked on and yeah, there were multiple. Like there was I think it was my round 3 where I just knew that okay, max like so Adamant, Terrafire, Fire Pond will OHKO most Kyogre if they most Terragrass Kyogre even with the rain up. Like no crit or anything. It's just a you just get it. And I made the read where I'm like, they're going to, like, because that was, I got the other way where I didn't think I'd get the KO and I lost. And when I ran the calc, I'm like, okay, yeah, actually, like, I should just always fight, like, go into it. And I got the KO. I looked at my opponent, he looked up at me, and he's like, I thought I was going to live. And I'm like, I knew you weren't.
Modifiers. I like that as well. Like, that's. Oh, man. I like. Stacking multipliers is hilarious.
It's so fun.
I don't know if because you go through phases right now as a busy adult where
Yes.
sometimes you're not really in the scene for a month or so, like you're kind of taking a step back. I don't know if you were familiar with my Reg F Sun team from the very beginning of Reg F.
No, I don't remember. I only played you with the Dozo team, and then you had your Clefairy team that you used for your top 32 in Orlando.
Yeah. So, and an EYC.
And yes, and at EYC.
But yeah, so the idea there was, and this team kind of took off a little bit. I had a lot of people bring it to events and like get coaching, which was kind of cool. I'm not the luckiest Pokemon player, so it was not the right team for me to bring to 2 different regionals. But I ran Torkoal with Eject-Pack Overheat and Helping Hand, Specs Special Attack boosting, Terra Fairy Fluttermane. So the whole idea was that at the very beginning of Reg F, the format was very, very slow. For the first couple of events, the most important speed tier was Lando, and you could run a Fluttermane that had almost no speed investment and still always go first. So I had a really bulky, modest Fluttermane, and like Helping Hand, Terra Fairy, Sun Boosted, Specs, Dazzling Gleam just killed almost everything in the format. So the entire idea, and then I had like Magnet, Terra, Electric, Special Attack boosting, like Raging Bolt on the team.
Oh, I think I do remember this team. You had Walking Wake.
I had like Life Orb, Terra special, or like Life Orb, like special attack boosting, Sun Walking. Like I had like the idea was just modifiers on everything, and like it does get to a point where it doesn't matter. Like it. I don't care if you resist me and have a screen up. It's not gonna work. There was a calc that I came up with. My go-to play into Chenpao Dragonite with that team was to lead Fluttermane Torkoal, and a lot of good Dragonite players would immediately Terra Normal Extreme Speed the Fluttermane, because that's an obvious Terra there. And I just used Helping Hand, no Terra, Moonblast, and it always died. Like, you're 252 HP and you're normal type? I don't care. Like, they just E-speed me, nothing happens, and then they die. Like, alright. Nice try!
And if they don't E-speed, well, you're going to outspeed them, yeah.
And if they don't Terra, they die. And then there was another one where it was like Shadow Ball, not Helping Hand, just like Proto Boosted Shadow Ball, just one-shotted Lando. So a lot of people just Terra Poison and just die. It's fine.
Yeah, it's just, I think, again, like, that's where I think you can really find the creativity and the edges in these formats. As you said, like, right now, as we're recording this, it's about 3-ish weeks or so before Worlds. We are currently in Regulation G. And, of course, like, you found your initial success in VGC in a restricted format, however it was GS Cup. How do you feel like, so you went to a Worlds with GS Cup and you went to a Worlds with this single restricted format. How do you, like, what differences do you feel between like competing at the highest levels with these 2 different restricted formats?
They're very, very different. Like, I find single restricted to be the least creative format that we have, because, like, I mean, there is a joke that's been going around for weeks now where it's like, oh, my Worlds team is like Urshifu, Incin, Rillaboom, Raging Bolt, and a restricted, and then you get one Pokemon that you can like mess around with, and it's like, that's a little bit over the, like, it's not quite that bad, but it is close. It definitely doesn't feel great. And like, as somebody who likes to get creative with building, it feels very limiting in this format. And like I've tried a lot of different things. Like it really doesn't feel like there's much you can do. Like obviously that's an over exaggeration. We saw Overquill top cut NAIC, and like there are ways to like do new things, but it's a lot riskier, a lot harder, and because of the way all like that it's so centralized, and because of the interactions that the various teams have specifically with Miraidon, Ice Rider, and Shadow Rider, if you try to get creative, you are essentially opting into the matchup roulette. Because the other thing that a lot of people are saying is that it's a matchup roulette. And it doesn't have to be. There are teams with decent matchup spreads that don't have like really terrible matchups into all of the major teams. So you can opt out of the matchup roulette. But you're picking. You're either running a stock standard core with maybe a little bit of creativity that doesn't have matchup roulette, or you're trying to get creative and you're playing the matchup roulette. And both of those things kind of suck. I don't really love either of those options. I'm not a big fan of single restricted. I think I really don't like adding extra volatility to the game. And the way my friend Nick Donnelly described it at NAIC, I think, is really accurate to this format. Most matchups, both players have the piece that will win them the matchup, and then the other person has the piece that answers that piece. And if either of them have something unfortunate happen to them, the game instantly ends. Yeah. Like your restricted gets crit, GG, it's done. Like, you're playing against a Miraidon and you have an Iron Hands and your hands gets crit, GG, you're done. Like, there's no counterplay. There's no way to play out of those situations. It's just like, all right, it's over. Like, and it feels like in this format more so than others, like, because one piece is so much more important than all the rest of the pieces, it compounds the volatility, or, the volatility of, like, crits and, like, you know, anything else, like secondary effects, flinches, anything like that is compounded by the fact that one piece is so much more important than everything else. And that really sucks. I don't like that. I don't love that at all. And then from the team building perspective, you have the issue where like a lot of restricteds are just completely useless because they're not designed to, or maybe not designed, but they're not capable of carrying a team on their own. And like you're like by choosing to run a Ho-Oh, you just are like, all right, well, my biggest piece like loses to Miraidon, loses to like Terra, Fire, Kali, Ice, like loses to Kyogre, like isn't very good against Terapagos, and so you just can't. And it's not that Ho-Oh's not a good Pokemon; it's just not capable of carrying in that position. Whereas in a double restricted, Ho-Oh could probably find a niche. We've seen some formats where Ho-Oh has seen some play. Even the single restricted in Sword and Shield, like the Series 10 no Dynamax, like it did see some play, but like now with the power creep of the Calyrexes and Miraidon, like you're not going to see a lot of these older ones that had niches do anything in this format. Whereas like double restricted, you get Pokemon like Lunala that gets access to Wide Guard. Coaching Wide Guard Zamazenta sounds like an amazing Pokemon to use in double restricted. Whereas right now, if you run Zamazenta, it has exactly one set. Like, there are so many cool ways you could build a Zamazenta team in double restricted. There are so many ways that you could make Zacian more reliable because you have that other restricted to cover for its weaknesses. When you have those two restricteds that are capable of covering for each other, it makes the team building and the actual gameplay a lot more dynamic because every team naturally has way more modes, which makes the matchup more fluid, as opposed to right now where, like, a lot of the time it's like, all right, in this matchup, this is my game plan, and my opponent's game plan is this, and we're going to do that 3 times, and one of us is going to win.
Yeah, I think what you said, like, with specific restricteds, especially in the single restricted, our good friend, Dr. Aaron Trailer, before the first Reg G event, made a list of the restricteds, and one of the things that he put for each one was how unfair is the restricted, and not as in like, oh, I'm going to cheat with it, but like the idea of Astral Barrage and Glacial Lance and the boosting ability that the courses have is just inherently unfair compared to like Lunala. Which
Yeah,
again,
it's like Urshifu. Urshifu is an unfair Pokemon. Incin is an unfair Pokemon. So like, why would you run like Luxray as your Intimidator when Incin is right there?
Like yeah,
but like I guess Arcanine would be a better parallel, right? Like Fire type Arcanine, like Fire type Intimidator that gets Snarl. Like okay, but like Incin, like use this one.
Yeah, and I think that's like, and especially with the single restrict, as you said, like that really is compounded where like Lunala is probably going to be an unbelievable partner to a lot of these other unfair Pokemon. Ho-Oh can. I'm not saying that it's going to happen, but like it actually has a chance to happen. Like, could Ho-Oh plus Koraidon be cool at least and viable enough for a local? Absolutely, more than just Ho-Oh on its own right now. So
I think Koraidon as a Sunsetter that has two types that have nothing to do with like no negative interactions with like water or anything is really interesting for a double restricted format. Like what you said, like Ho-Oh on a Sun team viscerally sounds bad because like the Sunsetters double up on the weaknesses of Ho-Oh a lot, but Koraidon doesn't. Like Koraidon actually like works really well with it. Like that could be really cool. I don't know if the moveset's work enough for them to have synergy, but like that's a great idea. Like I would love to try that out.
They both want Clamulate.
Yeah, but like I can see a way that you make that work. Like you could get very creative, and like I mean they don't necessarily both want clear. Like they don't necessarily both need clear amulet. You can run like Sacred Fire spam on the Ho-Oh just to like a more supportive Ho-Oh set, like Life Do stuff. I don't know, like it gets some interesting moves, but yeah, like I don't know. I think fundamentally the other problem is that if you look at like Series 10 and Sword and Shield, there were a decent number of mons that found some usage. Ho-Oh found some usage, Reshiram found some play. But we've been power crept out of that by DLC dropping the horses, which happened. Oh, actually, I guess the DLC dropping the horses was before that.
Yeah.
But like Miraidon and Koraidon, more so Miraidon. But the bigger problem is a lot of these unfair Pokemon from past generations, specifically Calyrex Shadow Rider, are balanced by their typing. So like you add terrestrialization to it, and it's like, okay, remember Series 10 when everyone thought that like Ghost Horse was going to be the most broken thing in the format, and then every team ran like 3 dark types, and it wasn't very good.
Yep, like
you can't do that anymore.
Yeah, everything had like 2 through Sucker Punchers. I had this cracked out set. It was it was on my Indeedee F. I threw Shadow Ball on it and enough special attack invest where they can't hit me and I OHKO them within Indeedee.
And that was, I ran AV Payback Landorus.
Yeah, like again, the creativity there, like you can make that and expose the typing. But I think what you just said there, for Miraidon, being able to add like Terra Electric to just add another multiplier on it. For the horses, for Kali Eye to stop, you can go Terra Fire to stop a burn or Terra Grass to stop the Amoonguss, so you have a super, super safe Trick Room mode. And of course for Calyrex Shadow, going from a times 4 weakness, an awful defensive typing, into saying, oh, I'm just going to be a fairy type. Or even simply going and saying, I'm just going to be a ghost type. So that still helps your defensive calcs because that times 4, because of times 2. And in doing so, you're also giving yourself pretty much adaptability on top of everything else.
Adaptability Astral Barrage, baby. Let's go.
Yeah. Like, I think that definitely is the place where another thing where you said like a lot of these Pokemon that were built from previous generations were built with specifically Gen 8 Mons. Like Urshifu was built with Dynamax in mind. It's a broken Pokemon, but you can't break Max Guard. And when you have the double HP, like those surging strikes aren't hitting as hard. And now it's like, oh, there is no turnoff. Like there's no play around the Urshifu besides resisting, and then you throw in the Terra Water, the Mystic Water, potential rain setup. It's so easy to get the rain up with your Tornadus next to it, or even just switching a Pelipper in. And again,
To
it's like,
to be entirely fair as well, though, like I agree entirely, but I think there are people in the game dev team that see these problems coming and do try.
yes,
like the existence of Raging Bolt. Nobody will ever tell me or convince me that the Raging Bolt designer was not thinking about Urshifu Rapid Strike.
I'm pretty sure the Raging Bolt designer got stomped by another designer with Urshifu enough where he said that I'm never letting this happen again.
Yeah, like it is like they do add counterplay, right? But it is a little funny that like I don't know how we got to this position where like they nerfed Eleki, but we're like, but you know what? Astral Barrage is fine.
Well, even Unseen Fist, that's another thing. I thought one of the changes that they were going to make going into Scarlet and Violet that I think is just would keep the premise of Urshifu, like you're not completely changing the way it could play, but making it so that Unseen Fist you do the 25% through protects. We've already seen that's how it worked with max moves. It's how it's worked with Z moves, where you're still hitting through it, but you're not doing that max damage. So there still is a defensive counterplay there. That was
Yeah.
that was the change that I thought, and maybe we see that in future generations. Maybe a few years of them just seeing how absolutely crazy Urshifu can be when there is no real check in terms of like outside of putting a Raging Bolt on your team, which in most cases you should have one on your team because it's also just really good with power creep. But yeah,
It really sucks from a team building gameplay perspective that like I like that they are considering and that they give answers to the right mons, but like from a game design perspective, I can't imagine that it's all that great to have to like think about formats and realize that like if you don't put the right Pokemon in the decks at the right time, you get Reg E.
Yeah.
Where it's just literally the same core winning every tournament. And it's like, all right, let's like, here's Tornadus, here's Urshifu. They didn't put a counter in. Like, and then on the player side, it kind of sucks that like, obviously this is an exaggeration to a degree, but like, it kind of sucks that it's like, all right, well, I have to put an Urshifu on my team. And because my opponent also has to put an Urshifu on their team, I have to put a Raging Bolt on my team. And like we end up with that meme where it's like, oh, Urshifu, Rillaboom, Incineroar, Raging Bolt, restricted +1. Like, yeah, it's an exaggeration and kind of a meme. But it's also like it comes from that kernel of truth in the middle of it where it's like, it feels so punishing to just not use those 4 mons. And it's like, you need a very, very good reason to not run Raging Bolt and to not run Urshifu.
Exactly. Now, moving a little off Pokemon, we mentioned this very early in the interview. You brought up that you came from another background. You've been a professional video game player, or at least in the esports world, for well over a decade, for over a decade at this point. And yeah, you are. I am too. We're ancient. I had to explain to someone. I'll get to the question in a minute. I had to explain to people today that the music that us as late 20s, early 30s millennials listened to when we were growing up in like the early to mid aughts, radio views that as standards now. And they earn standards bonuses, a lot of them. And I had to explain, like, yes, yeah, you're going to hear Sum 41 and Green Day on classic rock stations because that's what that is. Which made me feel old, even though I was the one giving them the answer. But yes, back around, I want to say it was the early 2010s, you got into the esports world as a professional StarCraft player, playing and casting there. If you want to just let the listeners know and also me know like what StarCraft was, and I think I'd say after that the best thing, like what are some things like having this decade plus in the esports world, what are things that you took from StarCraft that you continue doing in Pokemon? Like lessons you learned, different tips and tricks, or even just ways you view the game?
Yeah, so I started playing StarCraft 2 full time around like 2012, I want to say. And that was super fun. I was not like super good at StarCraft, but like I was like consistently in the Grandmaster League and like played in a lot of tournaments. I also did a lot of management and a reasonable amount of casting. So I was kind of doing everything in StarCraft 2. By the time I like went to that event where like Rosemary convinced me to play Pokemon, like Blizzard had kind of divested from StarCraft 2 on a developmental level. Like it was kind of in maintenance mode, and they had essentially dropped the Forever patch. Like since then, they have patched the game again. Like they've essentially like I'm not entirely sure how it works because nobody works on StarCraft. I think they move people. I think ESL comes up with the patch changes and then like they move people over temporarily to patch it or something. I don't know. I don't follow it that closely. But like anyway, at the time, what was supposed to be the Forever patch had been out for about 6 months and I hated it. I didn't think it was fun. I thought the gameplay was super boring. So I was very checked out at that point. So I was like, all right, I'll go play Pokemon. Like that sounds fun. StarCraft 2 is a real-time strategy game. It's kind of like the quintessential real-time strategy game from the 2010s. Obviously, like real-time strategy being a very prolific genre up until around that point. Like there are a lot of people who will say like, no, actually Warcraft 3 is the quintessential one. Or no, it's actually StarCraft 1. But anyway, StarCraft 2 for me, the best real-time strategy game to ever be released. And nothing compares to it at this point. It's awkward. Blizzard has had it in maintenance mode for about 7 years, I think. A bunch of RTSs have come out. A bunch of RTSs are in development. Most people's opinion is that they're all just kind of bad StarCraft 2. All right. I'm friends with Angelo, so I'm gonna drop some commentary.
Yes.
That people that I know would not be super thrilled to hear me saying on like the Twitter sphere. We have a lot of RTSs in development right now. We have the Immortal Gates of Pyre has been in development for the longest. It's a bunch of people who worked on StarCraft 2, not in a professional capacity, but like worked on fan-made games in the engine. It looks fine. It sure looks like a game that if I sat down and played it for 3 hours, I wouldn't have a bad time playing it. It's not going to go anywhere. It's not good enough. It just is not a good enough game. Stormgate's the one that's releasing next month, and Stormgate is a lot of the people, it's most of the people who were on StarCraft 2's development team at the time where they were like essentially turned into maintenance mode. They made their own company, they're releasing Stormgate. I'm really excited for Stormgate, but I played the beta a while ago, and it kind of felt like bad Warcraft 3. Like, it was fun, but like, I could go play Warcraft 3. Like, I don't know. So, we're in a really weird spot now, and that was also very early beta. I'm really excited for Stormgate. It might actually be really good now. But I'm apprehensive because we've seen all of these RTSs be released, and I think one of the biggest problems in the developmental sphere is that in like the early 2010s or like the late 2000 aughts, whatever, RTS was like a really big genre. So it was really, really easy for companies to justify investing massive amounts of money into game development. Like StarCraft 2 is a huge AAA game. And now, RTS isn't that. So everyone is trying to produce these replacement games on a budget. And yeah, we're like 15 years down the road since the release of StarCraft 2. There's a lot of new stuff out. There's a lot of development tools and things that like people could use to like make the game better that didn't exist back then. But the budget's not there. Like, nobody has the kind of budget to match the money that went into StarCraft 2. So the problem is people keep releasing these games. People keep releasing RTSs. They're like flavor of the month for like 2 weeks, 2 months if they're good. And then everyone's like, all right, anyway, StarCraft 2 circuit's still around. Let's go watch that. all of that being said, Battle Aces is another one that's in production right now, and they're the only ones that are actively trying to innovate the genre of RTS. And I think that is the only way to create a good, lasting RTS in the modern era. Because you can't follow the same formula that StarCraft 2 did, because A, StarCraft 2 did it perfectly, and B, you don't have the money. So, like, all of these companies that are trying to, like, make a classic RTS, where it's like, oh, you know, you start with your workers, and then you can make more workers and make more money, and then you make an army. Like, you can't beat that model. StarCraft 2 is too good a game. So what Battle Aces does is they essentially remove all of the quintessential macro mechanics from RTSs. You don't have to build workers constantly. You don't have to, like, it's just unit control. And it's kind of like the Pokemon Unite of RTSs. You go in, there's a 10-minute game timer. You're not playing a 40-minute RTS game because the other guy decided to turtle up. Most games are like 5 minutes. It's super addicting. You just keep wanting to queue over and over again. So that's the one that I think is going to be really good. So if you're an RTS fan, check out Battle Aces. Battle Aces is going to be amazing. They just closed their first beta, but there's going to be more betas. I'm shilling for Battle Aces now. I don't know how we got into this topic, but I'm shilling for Battle Aces. Everybody go sign up for Battle Aces.
I brought up StarCraft, and so going through that, like from the skills that you learn from these RTS games.
Right.
Yes. Which ones have you translated to your Pokemon?
I don't have a great answer for that. I look at Pokemon very differently from most players. I don't exactly know why. I don't know if that's a coming from RTS background kind of deal, but like even in StarCraft 2, I always liked kind of doing things outside the box, prioritizing like countering the meta as opposed to building the meta. I think that's an important distinction between like countering the meta and playing anti-meta. Like there's this kind of idea that like a lot of like not very good players in Pokemon have, where it's like, I'm not playing the meta because I'm a special little snowflake and I want to win with my Greninja. But like anti-meta is more like like in Reg E, the team that I was really happy that I built for the last event of Reg E was everybody was running Torn Shifu. It was everywhere. I built a team around Rotom Wash. Like I built a really cool team where like I won a midseason here with it, like a really really stacked Boston midseason. I think I played trailer in the finals.
You did, and I fell asleep watching the finals because.
Oh wait, no, sorry. That was Reg F.
Was that Reg F?
That was Reg F. I top cut a balance patch with the Rotom. That's what it was. I didn't actually win.
I think I fell asleep during both.
Fair enough.
Balance patch, please start sooner.
Yeah, honestly, true. But yeah, like that is kind of what I mean by anti-meta, where it's like I built a team because there was one team that was so prevalent, and I found a way to build a team that essentially annihilated the meta comps while still being a solid team. A lot of the time, it's hard to do that, but like I like to spend a lot of my time trying to do that, and sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. But even in StarCraft, I would do that a lot, where I'd be like, oh, like everyone is like all the Terran players are opening with like 1 Rax into 3 CC right now. Like they're playing super, super greedy. They're not making a lot of units. What if I came up with like, like this might go over everyone's head. I'm going to try to like put it in real people terms. But like my opponent is like spending all their money on not army units, but they have a wall. And so I can't break them. But what if I like invested in really fast drop tech so I could drop units over the wall and like you know that like stuff like that, where it's like trying to counter the meta is I think something that I kind of developed as a StarCraft 2 player that I've kind of brought over. And I think also to some degree I've always been following kind of my own idea of what's good and not really anyone else's idea of what's good. There are a lot of times where I will simply disagree with the conventional wisdom. Back in early Sword and Shield, early Scarlet and Violet. Right now, everyone is slapping Raging Bolt on teams, right? At the very beginning, everyone was slapping King Gambit on teams. It was just on every team. And I would look at a lot of those teams and go, King Gambit is not the correct decision here. And it's like, so if you look at my team that I brought to San Diego Regionals, which I top cut, like that, I had a King Gambit on that team, and then I realized that AB Scissor did the job better. and like people just weren't testing different things. They were just like, oh, Gambit works here and is a good Pokemon, so like I will use it. And I think like there's kind of the same kind of deal around Raging Bolt right now. Like Raging Bolt is a broken Pokemon. You should probably be using Raging Bolt, but you should also have a reason that you're using the Raging Bolt. Like your Raging Bolt should have a job. Like you should say, I want Raging Bolt because it allows me to do X. Like I can position Raging Bolt in like this way that allows the partners. Like you need to have a reason to use it, as opposed to just like I have Raging Bolt because big stat number. Like yeah, that's part of it, but like you need to have a reason for like it for and like it's fine to go out of your way to find a reason because like it is really good, but I don't like a lot of conventional wisdom stuff. I don't like looking at things and being like, well, this is good because everyone else says it's good. Like, you know, that's kind of the main thing I think that I've kind of always like that I've taken from my experience. Other than that, like 10 years of experience playing long days and events is really, really helpful at regionals. But,
Definitely. Well,
yeah,
with the changes, days are probably going to get shorter.
true.
We might get a lunch break back. That would be hype.
No. God, no. Please, no.
Oh, everyone, yeah, you don't like lunch
almost
breaks.
Everybody hates lunch breaks. They're so awful. They're so terrible.
The only event I went to with a lunch break, I used the lunch break to pretty much, like, MacGyver my one auto loss, which helped me finish out the day, like, doing well. I also can understand, like, you know, even just having a shorter day and being done at 5 and not 7 would be nice.
Yeah. Well, like the way I look at lunch break, which might change with like the way that, like I hate lunch break because it breaks momentum. I really don't like that, so I will never like lunch break. But right now, the way that the way things are, my biggest general person justification is like, if you have lunch break, you're just missing dinner. Like you're still missing a meal.
Yeah.
You're just changing the meal that you're missing.
Yeah, I could see that. Unless you're doing like a late dinner. Yeah, no, it works both ways. I can see how that works. Speaking of food, and this brings us to our final question, a question I ask all of our guests. What's your favorite thing to cook?
Ooh, so I'm a big stir fry guy. I really like cooking stir fry, but recently I've gotten really into a Puerto Rican rice dish. Arroz con gandules, I think is how you pronounce it. Super, super nice. Those are my two favorite things to cook right now. Big fan.
Okay, and with that, anyone you want to give shout outs to, things you want to plug, Twitter, Twitch, Discord, etc.?
Yeah. My Twitter is at Pengy Twitch. My Twitch is Pengy, but with 2 Y's because Pengy was taken. Yeah, I stream now and then. I'm focusing like a little bit less on stream. Like I'm just kind of streaming stuff that I'm having fun with. We're doing a Fire Emblem playthrough right now, but I still stream like VGC tournaments every now and then. I like to play the Hemi tours. It's a little awkward right now because like I'm not going to show my Worlds team on stream, but I'm also not going to invest a lot of time in something that's not my Worlds team. So like I'm just kind of rolling up with stuff and just seeing how it goes.
You played Groudon last night.
I played Groudon last night.
Yeah.
Yep. So like yeah, you know, like it's fun though. I enjoy streaming every now and then. But yeah, that's kind of it for right now. I'm looking forward to Worlds. I hope it goes well. But yeah, I'm also just looking forward to being able to get out to some locals again starting this weekend. I haven't been able to attend the first couple of weeks, so I'm excited. It's gonna be fun.
Yeah, and I'm excited to see you, and I'm excited to see how you do in Worlds. I believe our fans are going to be as well. We've had a lot of Worlds competitors. Actually, I think the last 4 or 5 guests we've had on are a Worlds competitor, mostly for VGC, and then we did have Anna Hoffman on for Go as well.
Cool.
So this has been the show of talking to some of the best and talking to our Worlds competitors. And if you want to go and listen to more stuff with our other past Worlds competitors, how they made their journey to Worlds, along with all of our other amazing content, you can watch us on our YouTube at Littleroot Lessons. Follow us on Twitter at LR Lessons. Of course, we have our Discord server as well. Links to that are going to be always in the show notes and on our Twitter page. You can follow all of our hosts and staff on their personal Twitters as well. And yeah, thank you very much everyone for joining, and we're hoping to have a lot more Littleroot record in the future. Have a great day, everyone.